Yeah, I think the first thing you notice about the film are the players, David Cohen, Joe Torre, Edgar Alfonso, got his mask on, he's sweating. You establish it's a COVID production. Talk about some of the challenges you had producing within the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, again, like we definitely made a decision, Tim, Jackie, and I, that like we weren't going to hide that. Like we wanted it to feel like this is a film of the moment. And often you don't want to do that, right? Because you want your film to kind of live. I mean, nobody's renting DVDs anymore, but when somebody watches it years later, you want it to be evergreen. But I didn't think that would interfere with that because this is going to be an artifact of its time, and we were living in such an intense kind of acute time. We were very fortunate that. Again, numbers were pretty good in New York, and most of the characters were in New York. So we worked with a great DP in New York, in Queens, who had his own kind of studio set up in Astoria. And so we were able, for the most part, to bring a lot of our interview subjects there, and they kind of had a COVID-safe setup. And then there were a few cases like where we interviewed Roger Clemens and Andy Pettit. We just kind of did it remotely in Houston, and they were comfortable doing it. And Piazza was actually in Italy, and we somehow had a connection to an Italian crew. And I did that interview at 5 a.m. in New York, but otherwise it was seamless. It's so crazy how for everyone in any industry, because people have been Zooming for a year now and so forth. But to think about if this had happened 10 years earlier, 15 years earlier, I don't think this technology would have made it as easy to do stuff. The joke is, for me, I'm always working on multiple things. And so it's kind of hard for me to like travel sometimes because I'm always kind of balancing a bunch of different stuff. And for me, like the fact that I didn't have to travel to these interviews and just sit in my apartment and then like log on, like that actually was kind of a, I would never say nothing has been good about this pandemic, but it was logistically, made it easier for me. And Tim and Jackie and I worked on so many things. So we worked very fine remotely. We typically work remotely anyway on some level when we've been worked on other shows in the past. And look, Fox was great. MLB was great. And, we were proud of what we put together.
Could the players, let me just ask real quick, could the players, the interview subjects see you, see your visual, or did they just hear your voice?
They saw me. So it was kind of like they set up a monitor on a stand, I guess, and it was just where my head would be and where they wanted me to be. So it actually like pinpointed the look. So I was like a computer screen, but yeah, we were able to establish that contact. It's funny from a creative standpoint. I don't know how deeply you want to get into it. One thing I did notice is that if I had been sitting in the same room as them, I think their voice tone would have been different. And so like, if you listen to them, it feels almost like they're shouting a little bit. It's not the sound. I think, again, that's like a nitpicky thing that only like the three of us would, as professionals, I think it all kind of works out, but there's not quite the intimacy. I think if I were doing a documentary about where I really needed to make a lasting connection with a subject, I'd want to be in person. These guys were phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but like I'm just a face to them. I wasn't like going to make a connection. So I think for the kind of film it was, that didn't really make that much of a material difference.